The climax of the whole story of the rebirth of the modern Jewish state of Israel takes place November 29th, 1947, the famous UN vote. Now today we don't think of the UN as being a body that is pro-Israel, especially the General Assembly. And especially since 2/3 of all UN resolutions passed since 1990 have condemned Israel, which is the only democracy in the Middle East. But interestingly enough, and arguably this is one of the few positive things the General Assembly has done in history, on May 29th, 1947, they got together and voted 33-13 to partition Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states. This, by the way, all biblical arguments aside, is the modern legal justification for creating a Jewish state. The legal body that decides these things, the UN, got together and voted. But the question is, why would they do that? We see how hostile so much of the world was to creating a Jewish state. Up until the last minute, even the United States government was asking Ben-Gurion, don't make a Jewish state. What was behind it? And we see an interesting and kind of sad aspect of Jewish history here. You know, every cloud, no matter how black, has a silver lining. And as weird as this might sound, there is no question in my mind that the silver lining of the Holocaust was the rebirth of Israel. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but I firmly believe that it took 6 million Jews dying for the world to get enough sympathy for the Jewish people to allow a Jewish state to be created. And as a matter of fact, we see this pattern continues throughout history until today. If you follow the news of the last few years, in all of the intifadas and violence, Israel, the only country in the world which is really not allowed to defend itself, which has to absorb missile attacks and have hostile terrorists living on its borders and within its own country, but is not allowed to react. You'll notice there's a great, interesting formula. It's probably mathematically definable. That according to the percentage of Jews killed or injured, world opinion will allow Jews to react. Terrorist attack in 2003, 25 Jews killed, whatever, in a bus bombing. Israel gets 7 days where it's allowed to go on the offensive. And then that disappears and the world starts saying, stop, you're overreacting. But I think that the greatest example of this point is what happened in the Holocaust. 6 million Jews dying bought enough sympathy and enough guilt from the world to allow a Jewish state to be created. But we jump ahead 60 years later and we largely see that sympathy and guilt has largely worn off. And the world is more or less back to a situation of attacking Israel and holding Israel to this very difficult double standard. It creates a unique challenge for the Jewish people in the world today. It creates a unique double standard the Jewish people have to deal with. But again, the solution to the problem is that the Jewish people in Israel have to get their act together and create a state whose mission is to be a light unto nations.